Hello, everyone. Hopefully, this is working. I probably should have checked that, but as I can see in the chat, you will be aware that I was running slightly late. My apologies on that one. Good to see some of you in here already. Well, that's a lovely comment. Thank you. Hi to your dad as well. That's cool. It's cool. I'm interested for all of you guys as well. What are your Thanksgiving traditions? I didn't know. I mean, Thursday night football, so a truncated week for me, as well as the actual teams playing the football games. I didn't know how many people would actually be traveling while this is live, but I don't know if that's a thing because I don't get to enjoy Thanksgiving. But I'm thankful for everyone spending your time with me. Sorry that I'm slightly late. Oliver reminding me. Now that is a nice looking turkey. Very fitting. Majombo. Interesting. Do I make espresso or drip? Well, I say that I make espresso, but then I was corrected by one of the German Seahawkers. One of the German Seahawkers, they were very keen to point out that what I was making is not proper espresso. It's, one of those mocha pots, the silver things. It's a small one of them. But then I saw someone saying that they're supposed to make 6 shots of espresso, which that would explain a few things if I am having 6 shots of espresso each time, but I don't think I am. Now I'm, yeah. Christopher saying I use pour over coffee like a real coffee drinker. You're right, Christopher. That is delicious. However, are you talking about well, there's various ways, isn't there? But I've got like an AeroPress, but that's such a faff. Like I'm too lazy to do that. It's the filter and the whole changing it and then the pushing it. I mean, I do have a cafetiere, but the cafetiere is a treat that comes out when we have the guests over. Does cafetiere, is that a thing? French press, that's what you guys would call it, isn't it? Because you're American. He just chews on beans and then drinks boiling water. It would be a bit quicker if I did that. Basically, Turkish coffee respect. Yeah, my coffee is it's actually from an Algerian shop in London. It's a big bag. I expect it to last a full season, but it hasn't quite. It's halfway through, so I need to pop down there again. What's up, Cameron? Good to see you. Another solo cast. These have been great. Thank you, Cameron. That means a lot. I'm becoming like a YouTube streamer, aren't I? I don't know. Hopefully it's still listenable for those who check in audio wise. I know the first half in particular should be. But yeah. Oh yeah, the Macy's parade. That thing, that's cool. Like that's a thing that happens, isn't it? Seriously, I have no idea. I'm very foreign when it comes to the Thanksgiving stuff. Cranberry bread and oranges sounds delicious though, Monjombo. But it's strange, like how we have turkey, or the tradition is for us to have turkey during Christmas, which is an American influence thing. Like cranberry bread, oranges, that all sounds very Christmassy to me. But you guys kind of get that all now, which I'm kind of envious of. I could enjoy Thanksgiving if I wanted to, says Christopher. That's right, I could. There's no reason not to. I was almost thinking of saying to my girlfriend tomorrow, hey, you know what? Let's do a roast dinner, as we'd call it, and have a proper Thanksgiving English style. But that would require me making it, and that would take a while. We'll see. It's a bit sad to just do it with 2 people. What's happening, says Jack. You need coffee doing these at 2 a.m. Well, Jack, it's actually 2:45 a.m. But the problem with having the coffee is then that you're having it at 2:45 a.m. So then how do you sleep? But that's a problem for future me. Jen, love the bucket hat. Well, there you go. It had been mentioned in the comments. Now, obviously, Ty, he does the Pete Carroll fit tracker, doesn't he? And we've been able to keep an update on what is Pete Carroll's best fit, what is his best outfit for when the Seahawks go and win games, it's wearing a baseball cap. But someone in the comments mentioned that when I wear the bucket hat, Seattle wins. Whether that's true or not, I'm not sure, but we could do with a Seattle win, couldn't we? I will talk about that in the stream, but they are struggling if they don't win this game. And it's a tough one. Jen, I'll make you roast beef and Yorkshire pudding. Well, thanks, Jen. See, that's not an issue for me. Like, I've got some of my family are from Yorkshire as well, so I've been blessed to have very nice roast beef and Yorkshire puddings. It's all this American stuff, like a good pumpkin pie. That's not really a thing in this country. But the pumpkin spice latte, that's made its way over here. Oh, yes. Anyway, so what we're going to talk about, guys, is as we let people join and I actually launched into the show, we're going to do the 49ers preview. But last night, I spent like an hour and a half going just through the offensive mess. It was offensive, but also the Seahawks offense. So this... I did promise that we'd look at how the defense did well on third downs, and I have a way of linking that to this upcoming Week 12 game. So I'm going to look at how the defense was so successful in that downs and distances against Stafford, where they went for 2 for 9. And I'm going to sort of conflate it to how that can hurt Brock Purdy as well, at least hopefully. Of course, you got to get them into third down, which is a whole separate issue. But fingers crossed it'll be better than last year. Let me just have a sip of this coffee in a hedgehog mug. Jen, you're right. CMC, that is the big problem. And for those of you concerned about my water consumption, there you go. Important, stay hydrated. Please do like the video, comment, tell a friend that I'm live, that sort of stuff. Christopher, when you say crunch coffee beans, are you saying crunch them and then the boiling water down the throat? Or are you like, don't want to get my video taken down, but are you talking about crushing them up and then arranging them in a certain way on a desk and then possibly having a sniff? But no, Christopher, I drink too much coffee to make that unpleasant. I mean, it can get unpleasant because you can be like shaking, but generally speaking, it's enjoyable. But thanks for your comment that I look like a coffee cruncher. And I have been told how to get like quality espresso for like not too bad a price, but then the thing, and like, not a massive machine. I just haven't ever got around to it, but I probably should. Yeah. Right. Well, chat, if you're ready, I'm ready. Let's oh, actually, let me just get up the thing here and then I'll launch into it. Pack Seahawks injury report. Thank you, Jack, for tuning in. I'm sorry that your wife doesn't like the live Matty experience. I'm sure we can convert her. Poverty Bay Cafe coffee beans, Matty, change your life, says Dan. Good to see you here, by the way. I always appreciate your support. Yeah, I haven't heard of that one. The thing is, there's a lot of good coffee, isn't there? And if I have to pay for that to be imported into this country, then, I'm sure it'd be delicious, but cost-effective wise, yeah. Jen, you're saying I'm a dig stan. Oh dear, oh dear. I'm not a dig stan. And I'm not going to protest too much, but yeah. Right, let's get started. Oh, one more sip of coffee for luck. Delicious. Here we go. Bang. Welcome to the Seattle Overload podcast, where it's Matty here, and it's time to preview Seahawks versus 49ers, week 12 of the season. Seattle sits at 6-4, the 49ers sit at 7-3, and it's kind of now or never for the Seahawks in terms of if they want to win the NFC West. That's why this Thursday night matchup on Thanksgiving is a very special one. So I'm going to preview that in some detail. And also afterwards, I've got a bit more of a bonus tape review where we're going to look at how the Seahawks defense managed to stop what the Rams were doing on their offense, particularly in the third down situations. That's the kind of lens we'll look at it through. They went 2 of 9, the Rams did on third down. So really successful performance from Seattle in that area after they struggled in week 1. I'm going to look at how that happened and translate that to what Seattle can do against San Francisco. There's a new coverage that Seattle is doing. Well, it's not new for them, but it's kind of an evolution for this season that will hurt Brock Purdy and Kyle Shanahan like to scheme up. But first, the 49ers game, and the significant news out of the practice report today, the Seahawks injury report, is Geno Smith is listed as questionable for his game status with that bruise on his right elbow, that bruised triceps tendon. However, he's expected to play, isn't he, the quarterback? And we'll get into how the Seahawks offensive line matches up with the San Francisco 49ers defensive front. But for now, it's just good that Seattle has their starting quarterback back there who played about as well as anyone could in that Rams game. Maybe missed a deep shot. So he's been fine other than that. Now, Kenneth Walker is out, the running back. The oblique injury he suffered, he's actually officially listed as doubtful, but Pete Carroll spoke to reporters today and described doubtful basically being, well, he could wake up and be okay. So realistically, we're probably not going to see Walker out there. That brings in an opportunity for Kenny McIntosh, doesn't it? Now, McIntosh was the undrafted free agent out of Georgia. He ran a slow 40 time, so his stock in the draft kind of fell. I think there may have been a medical thing as well that was going on. But he looked great in camp. He was the kind of rave review out of camp. And then he unfortunately hurt his knee in the Seahawks mock game. And that has seen him be out. And he'd gained those opportunities in camp because Seattle's running backs, Kenneth Walker, was a bit banged up in camp. And so he was kind of elevated up there. I think Charbonnet had some stuff he was dealing with during that early kind of off-season work. And now it's his chance for him to really show up. Obviously, Seattle has Zach Charbonnet, who's going to get the bulk load of the carries, their second-round pick from this past draft cycle. But McIntosh is actually going to play. And I think his primary way of working in, DJ Dallas did show up on the injury report with a shoulder, but he's a full participant in each of the practices, although Monday and Tuesday are projected. But I think Dallas will probably get elevated into that 2 spot, change of pace spot, and McIntosh, if his pass pro is trusted, he'll probably get kind of passing down work, screen work, be a kind of 2-minute drill back almost. We'll have to see. It'll be interesting to see how that all shakes out. Now, the other noteworthy news is that this game is supposedly too soon for Abraham Lucas to play, which is kind of weird because he's a full participant in Wednesday's practice. He's been dealing with that sore knee. He's just come back and into these kind of practices. But whatever that pain he's dealing with must be awful. And you just worry about, not just whether he's able to play in week 13, not week 12, but just his long-term career. Like, this is a chronic thing he's been dealing with. I know he first was hurting that knee in college, and, he's been trying to manage the pain through this offseason, wasn't able to, went on IR after week 1. And this soreness is still, even though he's fully participating, it's really a tough recovery for him. They're probably handling the load, so it's going to be interesting. And Erickson corrects me already. Thank you, Erickson, in the chat saying McIntosh was a 7th-round pick. You're correct, which is a brilliant moment, wasn't it, that draft call, the way that he reacted to being passed up by so many teams. I know he became a fan favourite after that, which is completely understandable. Right. That's the Seahawks injury report. Now, 49ers-wise, there's some... and I should also say about this, the Seahawks defensively, Kobe Bryant, full participant. Expect him to play. Jamal Adams, also a full participant. And I'll kind of talk about his role when we look at this precise matchup. Now, 49ers wise, there's some real noteworthy things. So Aaron Banks, their left guard, he was a limited participant on Tuesday and a limited participant on Wednesday, and his game status is officially questionable. Meanwhile, the right guard, Spencer Burford, may also not play. He's also questionable. He didn't participate in any of this week's practices with a knee injury. So Banks dealing with turf toe, Burford dealing with a knee injury. You know, they obviously have depth pieces behind that, but two of the interior of the offensive line is a significant thing. Right. So, when it comes to this 49ers offense, all of their major weapons, though, are fully healthy. They'd had periods where Deebo Samuel was missing. Christian McCaffrey kind of got banged up, didn't he? But they're all fully firing. And I think when they're all fully firing, it's a terrifying proposition. And Pete Carroll immediately sort of went to McCaffrey as their main piece. And I think that's because he's their kind of solution for if teams are removing certain other players, they can just get him on an option route on a linebacker at the backfield. And I think a big part of this battle is going to be seeing how Seattle handles McCaffrey getting matched up on a linebacker. And there's things from their defensive play calling perspective where they could maybe blitz that linebacker onto McCaffrey to kind of avoid him getting downfield, keep him in pass protection via various pressures. They're also probably going to try and get their safeties matched up on McCaffrey a bit more, like a Julian Love playing like weak cover 3. That's a way of doing that. But it's going to be difficult. And just from a data perspective, the 49ers offense is just absolutely insane. So I'll just get this up on the screen in a second. But their true dropback EPA per play and the play of Brock Purdy, Mr. Very Relevant, is just nuts from an efficiency standpoint. And I know a lot of the charting companies and the kind of advanced metrics don't really rate the pass protection of the 49ers. It's more been Purdy's ability to be so efficient hitting the deep ball and the kind of downfield concepts, and obviously Shanahan's ability to scheme open that kind of primary concept and the weapons and the talent that they have at being able to get open that is kind of the star of the show. So let me just get that up here. If you look at their EPA per play overall, they're the first in the league. The Dolphins suffered a bit of a slide there, didn't they? But the main thing I want to focus on is, as I was saying, why won't that work? Anyway, you can see it here. Their drop back EPA per play is 0.342, which is by a significant margin the best team in the league. The second best team is I believe it's the Dallas Cowboys. The Dallas Cowboys is 0.200. So that's a massive chunk ahead of everyone else. So Seattle's ability to stop the passes, I mean, in theory, they have the coverage talent. I just worry about, we saw it last Sunday, the way that McVay was able to get Bobby Wagner in tough matchups, put him in positions where he has to turn and find the race route. There's about 2 or 3 plays where Wagner's lack of agility was kind of exposed by McVay. And that's going to happen against these best play callers in the league, especially the guys who are really good at kind of blending in your gun concepts with that under center run game. So that's a tough one for Seattle. But well, like I said, they have enough. They have enough coverage personnel aside from Wagner. It's just going to be an interesting aspect, the kind of linebacker thing. Now, their offensive line has been a problem, as I said, and Trent Williams coming back is a huge thing for them at left tackle. Like, not just for their pass game, but their run game. What he enables them to do in their rushing attack is crazy. He's so good at getting out in space on guys and also being powerful. He's just like the complete left tackle, probably the best left tackle in the league. But the interior, and I mentioned the injuries that they've got on the inside, that is significant. And what I'd say is the way that Seattle matches up, Leonard Williams had an absolutely brilliant game against the 49ers, didn't he, when he was playing for the Giants this season? So much so that Griffin highlighted that and highlighted how Williams was the 49ers killer, in theory. That's the kind of thinking you could have behind that type of move because of how successful he played against them. Now, it wasn't just showing up in the stats, but it was kind of just wrecking all types of plays, and the way that he was deployed was super effective, because I know that he had 0 tackles for loss against them, and he had also, let me find it. Yeah, and he had half a sack, but if you watch the tape back, it's really kind of dominant stuff, and it kind of speaks also to those kind of patchy 49ers guards. So really the battle for Seattle in this instance is their defense needs to be able to remove that kind of first downfield schemed up shot. And I think a big way that can happen is, I talk about, well, what if Bobby Wagner's the guy who's responsible for turning to find the deep race route, the over route? This game, and when I asked Pete Carroll on Monday, how have they managed to run so much over front? How's their run defense been good for the majority of the season, despite them running so much over front? And Pete Carroll kind of corrected me and mentioned how it's not really despite. They expected to run so much over front, but then he went on to say that the 3-4 stuff is still part of the scheme. Now, why he had mentioned that, and let me just stop sharing this. Why he had mentioned that is the 49ers still use a fair bit of heavier personnel. So Seattle plays nickel over fronts, the like 2-4-5 personnel look, where you have either Devin Witherspoon in the slot or Jamal Adams in the slot. They've played that it will be over 85% of their snaps, like in a neutral game state on the season. They love that. They've even done it against teams when they're in 12 personnel, albeit with that kind of bigger nickel in Jamal Adams, or even Devin Bush has kind of played in that role at times. But the 49ers are the type of offense where they still feature I formation looks and the like. Let me find their exact numbers. But the reason that I formation is difficult is because it obviously with Kyle Juszczyk, and then, while the 49ers have George Kittle as their primary tight end and the guy who can catch the football, I've always felt that they're somewhat underrated in the second tight end department from a blocking standpoint. Like they really get good blocking out of that. How do I best find this? But essentially, Seattle is basically running a scheme where it's very similar to what they did in 2012 and 2013, 2014 up front, where when they need to get in base, and they will get in base, which is technically for them 3-4 personnel out on the field, not 2 defensive linemen, 4 linebackers with 2 of those guys being outside backers, 2 of them inside backers, and 5 defensive backs, but 3 interior defensive line bodies, and then 4 linebackers, the 2 outside backers, the 2 inside backers. When they'll get into base when they are facing a kind of heavier run team who are using, those 2 running backs, a fullback and a running back and a tight end, or against a team who's going to play real under center stuff, which requires just a bit more of a commitment to the run. And I mentioned how their scheme is a bit like years past. What they're doing is they're basically running an over front, so the 3 tech to the strong side, and reducing down in the base look, and running it. It ends up looking like a 6-2, and Jamal Adams is a massive factor in that plan, coming off the edge. When Seattle used to play that look, Cam Chancellor was the edge player, and then on the other edge it was an outside backer. Now that's going to be Jamal Adams, and so I mention this because think about Bobby Wagner getting matched up on a intermediate route across the field. Well, the way to prevent that happening is you pressure the quarterback, move him off his spot, prevent him having the time for that to play to develop. So that will be a big part of their game plan. And Carroll mentioning that they're still got 3-4 stuff kind of involved in their scheme, that's because that's going to feature this game. We've only seen it against the Ravens, really, like the base 3-4 stuff at like a fairly high rate. And that's because of the Ravens run game, their heavy personnel, the fact that they've got a really talented run game, the fact that Lamar Jackson poses some significant problems. But the 49ers are that quality of opponent, that type of challenging an opponent on offense too. So expect to see Jamal Adams coming off the edge. If Jamal Adams can't go, then they may play Kobe Bryant in that role because they might need a bit more size than Witherspoon doing it. But they might do it with Spoon. But ultimately, you'll see more kind of. It will look like a bear front because there'll be 5 guys to start off with down at the line of scrimmage, but it's technically like a reduced over where, like I said, 3 tech to the tight end side. Then the nose is shaded to the weak side, and then the third interior D lineman, he plays on the inside shoulder of the tackle, and then they have a guy down on the line of scrimmage, an outside backer type. Let me find as I said, doing this live, I should have been more prepared because I don't know. Let me just put it in here. I don't know how long to look up things. Bear with me a second. Ringer at 2020. Well, let me catch up with the chat while that's all loading. Yeah, Jen, exactly. The Niners do have 2 offensive line starters out. Scooter, thank you very much for the kind words. Well, Jen, that's the thing. You're saying about Abe Lucas potentially, taking painkillers, and I know you say that in jest, but for it to be that bad, like with what NFL players generally put themselves through, for it to be this bad with like the kind of options that NFL players have to manage pain throughout a season, it must be horrendous. And the fact he's been dealing with it in the off season as well, that's kind of why I talk about, it could, you hope it isn't, but it could be a career threatening thing if it's been going on this long. Big Cat needs to have a big game, says Jen. He does. He definitely does. Some comments on the offense, which I'll get to. Greetings, 5011. Good to see you. Right, let me find this team perform. Well, it's not loading, so that's not great, is it? Yeah, so the 49ers have used the second most 21 personnel in the league. 38% of their snaps are in 21 personnel. 13% of their snaps are in 22 personnel, which is the highest rate in the league. So, like I said, they require Seattle to play that kind of base 3-4, especially on the early downs. So it'll be an interesting battle. Also, what that means is if you see an edge rusher dropping into coverage, like it could be a Boye Mafe, don't freak out. Like, that's what has to happen sometimes. It's essentially going to be, they're playing left and right on the outside backers, basically, but it's Bruce Irvin used to drop into coverage for Seattle as the Sam. So it's a bit like that. Right. Now, in terms of the 49ers defense, it's pretty scary, isn't it? Because the line of scrimmage battle was lost last time out. 61 pressures over 3 games Seattle allowed, and they lost all 3 of those games, of course. And Geno Smith spoke about how that's completely unacceptable. But with how the offensive line performed versus the Rams last week, where Geno Smith was sacked twice and there was 8 quarterback hits, and it wasn't just the O-line, it was kind of the downs and distances that they were put into. It was also that some concepts took a while too long to get open. It was also that it was just a bit of a mess. But what I'm saying by that is I don't think much of that was on Geno last week. It's a bit scary against this 49ers front, isn't it? Because they're so talented. They have so many different options. And I just don't see how realistically it can go well unless Seattle plays a very clean football game, which is an important factor that they will have emphasized given how many penalties they gave up last Sunday. But, the Chase Young additions just kind of fuel to the fire. It always feels like the 49ers have about 5-6 first-round picks on that D-line, and it's kind of the same this year. A bit more of a blitz-heavy approach this season. But one area that I'd say that Seattle could look to exploit, and maybe this is the game that they kind of break tendency, and we looked at it yesterday, but maybe they run the ball a bit more in those second and short situations and maybe they take more shots in the second and short situations, and maybe they run the ball a bit more in the third and short situations to try and break their tendencies established on the season. But yeah, the 49ers run defense is a problem. So overall, the 49ers defense is 5th in EPA per play and 14th in success rate. And success rate wise, that's only 2.2% better than Seattle. But the 49ers, from a dropback EPA per play perspective, they're 5th best, 8th in dropback success rate. So they're really solid there and getting better. And, Chase Young's just joined. But where they're having issues is they're the 4th worst run defense by rush EPA. And they're also just only 22nd in the league in rush defense success rate. So they're not that good at run defense. And I think Seattle's got to try and help out and run the ball in a more effective way. They had they're kind of sprinkling in some more kind of shotgun gap concepts. We saw it last night on the Colby Parkinson holding play. That was a gun gap concept as my camera goes out of focus. But yeah, the run game, I don't know why that happens. That's annoying. Is it this? Anyway, yeah, the run game could be an opportunity for Seattle, and I'm sure there will be, if you remember the playoff game, I'm sure they'll be emphasizing the run game. The 49ers have also had a bit of a screen defense problem, and Seattle's screens have been much improved. So that's another area that I think Seattle will look to hit. Hopefully there's no regression there or an improvement there for the 49ers. That would be a bit annoying, wouldn't it? Now, overall, I was surprised that the line for this game is the 49ers are 7-point favorites. Like, that is massive. And I think it speaks to the fact that Seattle hasn't won convincingly in a bit again, and they haven't really beat that good a team. And that Rams loss was just very damaging, and their offense hasn't really looked like a functioning unit, and they haven't played a complete game. I think point differential is a good way of looking at it. So the 49ers are plus 120 in point differential, whereas Seattle is -2. So despite them only having, 7-3 versus 6-4, Seattle really, they've been kind of blown out, and they've won some tight ones, lost some close ones too. But the 49ers have been much more dominant in the way that they've won, much more convincing. And the way they've lost hasn't really been too bad for them. Now, overall, Seattle is 8-5 on the 49ers in the last few years. 8 wins, 5 losses, but of course they lost all 3 games last year, like I mentioned, and the over-under total is 43. What I'd say about this game is the start of a massive stretch for Seattle in that, they have this 49ers game, then the Cowboys, then the 49ers, or is it then the Eagles? It'd be good if I got that right. One second. Yeah, it's so weird that it's the 49ers and then the Eagles. So 49ers, Cowboys, 49ers, Eagles. Odd schedule. But what I'd say is it's such a big stretch. And the last time Pete Carroll lost 5 games in a row was when he got fired as the Jets coach. And what kickstarted that, the first loss, was the Dan Marino fake spike game. It would be very uncharacteristic for Seattle and a Pete Carroll team to lose all 5 of these games, or all 4 of them after that Rams loss. And I'd be really concerned if they don't win at least 2 of these games, just from a kind of culture standpoint, but also like a come to play standpoint, now or never. Now, I think it's what you can take solace from. While it's frustrating and annoying in the moment, it's not encouraging, but it's positive that a lot of their issues have been kind of self-inflicted things, kind of kickstarting and letting teams back into it. Now, that's also what bad teams do, don't get me wrong, but it's also something that good teams are able to correct. So I'm excited for this stretch in a number of ways. I think we find out a lot about Pete Carroll as a coach currently. I think we find out a lot about the Seahawks as a team and how good they can be. Because, say if they won one of these games, well, yeah, it's going to be tough from there. It's going to be really tough. And tomorrow is such a big opportunity. I know they always speak kind of in cliches about taking each game at a time, and they do take that actually genuinely seriously. But they kind of know themselves that this is the game that they kind of have to win if they're serious about winning the NFC West. So we will see. I'm excited for it. Let me catch up. Any word when we get Griffin back? Not yet, Brandon, but he's all good. He'll be back eventually. You're concerned with them relying heavily on Geno and not changing their game plan when he won't really be able to push it downfield. He's injured. Hopefully it means we end up with a short passing game. Well, Brandon, I wouldn't be too concerned about that. What I'd say more about that is that's why you have to avoid the long downs and distances where it's obvious you're passing. Like, you can't be in 3rd and 11 that often against this team, especially. But even in the NFL against any team, you can't do that. So, yeah, putting it on Geno's shoulders happens in those spots. And I think the game plan will be getting the ball out fast. And they have established a screen game. They could definitely work a bit more on their quick game concepts. And Brandon, I don't agree that their running plays are telegraphed. What I'd say more so is that there may be a thing of some of their formations maybe tipping pass. But yeah, their running plays, they're really trying to kind of change tendency, and like I said, they're sprinkling in more kind of pulling guards, gap style concepts in the shotgun. I've seen that the last 2 weeks. And Jen says Charbonnet seems more efficient than K9. I mean, maybe Jen. I know his is so basic, it's not really efficiency, but his yards per carry last week weren't good. But Walker's problem last year and kind of this year too is that very kind of bust, and then boom nature to his game, isn't it? I think also just the style of Walker versus Charbonnet is what we're seeing there as well, whereas, Walker will kind of dance a bit and he has the ability to really quickly cut and cut it back on people. He hasn't done that for a while, though, the massive cut back across the field. And that kind of shows what coaching's been going on, what he's learned from that process as well. But Charbonnet has that style in contrast where he will go north-south and put his helmet into someone's chest. So I am interested. Why I mentioned Charbonnet's yards per carry, Jen, is, is that the case from an efficiency standpoint? I'm curious to see that. Ericsson, this is where I'm so glad Bobby came home. His wisdom will show out. I mean, don't get me wrong, Bobby's playing some really good football. But Ericsson, this is the game, personally, that I'm concerned about Wagner in, just from how Shanahan's going to get him matched up on intermediate crosses. But maybe I'm overthinking just one small aspect. But we saw, like I said, 2 to 3 rough moments where McVay kind of really just isolated Bobby in a bad situation. Then we saw some real kind of slow plays where a prime Bobby Wagner, he makes a play on a football in his own window. If we have time, I'll try and get to the tape of that as well. And 5011, you mentioned the 49ers cornerbacks and safeties not as good as their front 7 passing deep would be available. If Seattle can pass, but that's a big if, eh? Well, that's the thing. That's the exact battle. They might not look that good. But yeah, good luck. Now, that brings me nicely to a point about the 49ers defensive style. It's so annoying watching this 49ers team play, and they're without Hufanga, their safety, the All-Pro last season, a really aggressive style safety. He's out for the year. So they're lighter in that aspect. But it's so damn annoying watching them because all the 49ers do, what it looks like, is a very kind of well-run, well-executed version of what Seattle did back in 2014. And that's not just, well, that's partly the fronts that they run. So the fact that they're running so much 4-3 over and the kind of mechanics for how that all fits, some kind of real nerdy stuff that the kind of similarities are obvious to me at least. But it's also the way that their cornerbacks and safeties play technique-wise and how, like, in cover 3, the 49ers aren't afraid to read it or play, like, zebra, as you guys would say, techniques in their zone coverages, essentially being press man-to-man if the receiver splits allow for it. So if you've got a single receiver and a tight end, I can play that like press man-to-man, even though we're in a zone, cool, and release the underneath routes. And it just, like, I forget which game it was, but I tweeted after because I was interested to see what had happened. It was an early game in the season, but I heard the 49ers using a defensive check, which is in the same language as what the 49ers use, and they used as what the Seahawks used back in the day, and the same. It was for the same reason. Essentially, they got a slot formation, and the 49ers were calling Reno, which is an old Seahawks slot check. Now, the way that they ran the slot coverage looked slightly different, but there was definitely similarities, and I wonder if that's just the carryover. But system-wise, there's definite translation. And it's annoying because they're so good at it. And obviously, Fred Warner in the middle of the defense, the way he's able to relate to zone concepts, match certain patterns, is just like a prime kind of Bobby Wagner, although with that kind of modern day, slightly smaller size and crazy kind of footwork and agility to match up with routes. And then the way that they drop off into zone and then break on the check down and actually even punish it, they're just disgusting. So frustrating seeing that happen in San Francisco, but from a kind of defense aficionado standpoint, it is pretty cool. To me, it feels like this season is going off the rails, says OD Death Metal. Yeah, I don't disagree with that. And that's why I think that's why this game's huge. You don't want to overemphasize it, but 7-4 and you'd be first place in the NFC West versus 6-5, where you're looking like basically done. You have to go to Dallas I know it's just a week, but it's another Thursday game. And then you got the 49ers on the road again after, losing to them once. And I think this is why as well, like, I mentioned how this is important to learn about Pete Carroll. Well, how many times have you... I always go back to that game where Seattle played on the road in New England and beat them in 2016. Noel Thomas smacked the crap out of Rob Gronkowski down on a seam route. But in that game, I think the offense was really banged up, and that was the CJ Procise breakout game. But I kind of go to that as a game of like, as from a Seahawks perspective, no one really expected them to go and win that, and they won that well. And what you'll say from Pete Carroll teams is they always play hard, all three phases of the football. It's what Kyle Shanahan mentioned in his press conference yesterday. You've got to expect that happening. And so when I see that Seattle's a 7-point underdog, I'm very, very interested to see how this game goes. It's a big, big game. Derek, thank you so much for the donation. Appreciate your support, and happy Thanksgiving to you too. Yeah. There's two ways to donate to the stream if you enjoy what we're doing, what I'm doing. You can use the YouTube Super Chat feature, which I think is simple enough, or there's a Stripe link in the description. Right. Well, chat, is there anything else you want to know about this matchup? Or shall we go into the tape? Let me know. I know there's a slight delay, so I'll wait for you to catch up with that. The other thing I didn't mention is this is an action green game. I'm not that big into delving into the uniforms, but yeah. I've told this story before on the podcast, but the first Seahawks game I went to was Seahawks versus Rams. I believe that was 2016 as well. It was the first action green game. And Jeff Fisher had just been fired as Rams coach. And the uniforms are very bright. And the Rams are using white uniforms, which kind of meshed bad. And it was their old uniforms, which looked really bad. And Richard Sherman had that big hit of Jared Goff on the sideline. And Russell Wilson made an incredible throw to, I think it was Doug Baldwin. But I was actually I think it's because it's a Thursday game, and I'm interested to see how the crowd is tomorrow, because it is Thanksgiving. But I was disappointed on that particular Thursday with the crowd. There was a few empty seats. I guess people have to get off work. Like, it was a 2016 team, and yeah, some fans who weren't very happy with noise, which was a bit weird as well. So not the but the Seahawks did win the game, so that's good. Right. Okay, so the other thing I wanted to talk about, and I meant to talk about before I get to the tape, was penalties. Now, I've said before that I feel the issue of penalties that are committed by a team are slightly overblown as a topic. Now, why do I say that? Well, you're either competing or you're not, right? And you want to play so on the edge of a game that you are close to committing a penalty but don't get pulled up on it. And I found it very interesting how, in his Monday radio appearance, Pete Carroll spoke to Brock and Salk, and he mentioned how possibly he's getting them to try it a bit too hard, and that's why some of these penalties are happening, like the holding penalty, where they could just let a player go. Now, of course, why this comes to the forefront of the topic is the Seahawks are the most penalized team in the league when it comes to penalties, and in that Rams game, they committed 12 penalties for 130 total yards, which is absolutely nuts, isn't it? Now, I said they're the most penalized team in the league. What does that look like? Well, they've had 76 penalties against them for 639 total yards, which is nuts. But kind of to my point about how the best teams in the league generally tend to be most penalized as well. Well, Buffalo, they're not the best team in the league, but I think people would regard them as a solid team. 73 total penalties, although one extra game. Dallas, same amount of games as Seattle. 74 penalties. This hasn't been updated, has it? Okay, me looking at this is is a bit bad. But anyway, this was before Seattle put themselves ahead even more. Another example, San Francisco, 69 total penalties. Let me try and find an update because it's stupid. But my general point is, I think good teams tend to get penalized because they're playing on the edge. Bad teams do too. And eventually, if you don't correct it, it'll be a problem. But I think it's about finding the edge of what you can play at and pushing the kind of envelope. So I think that's kind of an overblown factor. Jen, thank you so much. Let me use that as a prompt to drink some coffee, and then I'll buy some. So while I transition to the tape, Thanksgiving wise, teach the English person about Thanksgiving. Is it like Christmas where you get like a bit merry before Thanksgiving, like the day before, and then you like wake up and you get a bit more merry? I think that's what I would do, because you all get work off tomorrow, right? So I guess you have to prepare your Thanksgiving meal. But and is there like a Thanksgiving drink? Is there a typical thing? Ericsson, you saw Levi Bell listed as a running back somewhere. Well, remember he did feature as a fullback in the preseason. Majombo, that's cool. You're a teacher. I didn't know that. That's unfortunate about the college students, but like, if they can leave, they probably will, right? Are they meant to? Camera focus, right? So why I brought up that topic of penalties, obviously they were a big issue against the Rams, like I said, and even on defense, it was a big problem for the Seahawks. So as I just bring this up, 5 of the first downs Seattle's defense allowed were via penalty, and that's despite them going 2 for 9 on third down. So let's look at some of the things though that the defense did well. If they can clean up the kind of issue of the third down, the penalty performance against the 49ers, there's no reason that all the good things that they've done this season can't translate to this 49ers game. I think what's going to show up here is a certain coverage Seattle's running, which will cause problems for Brock Purdy in the way that Shanahan wants to move the ball down the field in the drop back passing game. But also Seattle's run defense, remember, has held opponents to under 4 yards to carry for the majority of these games that they've been in. And maybe a slight concern would be they haven't run as much base, and when they did run base against Baltimore, they looked a bit rusty in certain areas. But I think they'll be much more dialed in this game for that. So let's get this up. So that's not that. Let me actually fix what I'm doing. Ruin myself. Let me remove that. Let me do. That's better, isn't it? There we go. Right. So a big key also to getting off the field on third down for Seattle is 3rd and 13, third and long situation. So this is the first one of the game. So let's talk through Seattle's scheme. So this is their green front. I don't actually know what they call it, but it's just 3 techniques and an even presentation. So you see that they're in the forefront. Now, if Jamal Adams had been playing, Jordan Brooks probably isn't on the field. They probably play dime in this type of situation with Adams in the weak linebacker spot, which Seattle calls the jack. But in dime, they'd call the dime backer. This is the Mike, Bobby Wagner, and here's the nickel, who generally goes to where the passing strength is, which doesn't include the running back if he's in the backfield. It's the most receivers. So receiver, tight end, receiver. So there's 2 receivers out here. There's 1 wide receiver out here. So the nickel goes here. The jack goes to the other side. And the Mike goes in between the 2. Now, coverage-wise here, we have quarter, half, or half, quarter, depending on how you look at it. So on this side of the field, Seattle's playing cover 2, and on this side of the field, they're playing cover 6. When cover 4 is played to the strength, so if we say this is the strength, when cover 4 is played to the strength and cover 2 is played away, then it's cover 4 plus 2, so it's cover 6, quarter, half. But when they play cover 2 to the strength and cover 4 away, it's basically cover 8. And that's just a Vic Fangio tree thing. Now, what did they do which is good here? Well, they forced the check down. And pass rush-wise, they moved Matt Stafford off his spot. So you can see how on this side of the field, the back expanding out holds Woolen here. And while we have a curl dropper here in Witherspoon, there's potentially windows here. But Seattle's players have got enough depth for the ball not to come out immediately. If Stafford had more time in the pocket, he'd have been able to move up a bit more. And this type of window, potentially, although you have a quarter safety who could drive on it, but that type of window could be there if he was comfortable in the pocket. Instead, Boye Mafe speed rush off the edge, move Stafford off the pocket. He's potentially thinking about, Wagner's drop here is actually good. He's potentially thinking about this window, but you've got defenders here. It's too risky. He senses the time is running out in the pocket, and so he checks the football down. So great kind of Russian coverage. Look how deep Seattle's able to drop underneath this stuff. This is the first down marker. They're not covering the check down, but they know that when they see this thing, these underneath players know that the check down's there, and they break on the football. Now, Tariq Woolen could become a better tackler. That's been an issue of his, but Witherspoon helps him out here. Now, pass rush-wise, what's cool about what Seattle does? Well, it's that 2-3 technique front, like I said. Why teams like that is it gives a wide angle for the 3-tech and the 3-tech, and it often means that the edge rush is going to be one-on-one, and you only got 4 guys down, so you get an extra guy to play with in the coverage. The center usually will slide to one way, but it's an easier way to get the best rush angles for guys. So that's often why you see that in passing down situations when a team's just wanting to rush 4 across the NFL. Now, Mafe just gets a great kind of rip through of the guard, speed rip through, and Stafford is always a deep dropper, especially in 3rd and 12, so that moves him off the spot. And a good job from Jaron Reed, and they've probably communicated on this, understanding how Mafe was going to rush this. From a Reed perspective, he gets the center sliding towards him, so he understands that he doesn't have a one-on-one, so he kind of just needs to occupy both these players for as long as possible to leave Leonard Williams in the one-on-one on this guard here. So he's what you'd call the A-gap push player, and you'll notice Reed, after occupying the 3-tech, starts to drift into this center, into the A-gap. And that's how he's able to really get the hit on Stafford. Williams versus his one-on-one here takes the inside move, which is something you can do, but he doesn't win. So that's a great start to the 3rd down coverage from Seattle, just playing a very simple defense. But yeah, this is the DPI play. Yeah, that's not a catchable football, is it? It's ridiculous. Now, up front, this is a double A-gap look, which is really cool. Remember this look because Seattle featured it. So it's that same 2-3 technique front, but you've also got the linebackers mugging the A-gaps. So that just creates one-on-ones, and it keeps the running back in pass protection, because from an offensive perspective, how do I block this? Well, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 guys who could rush realistically, potentially 7. If I'm playing 5 across, I need an extra guy to give us just a -1 disadvantage if everyone comes. You can't really have 2 players because then the quarterback can't make the pass pro right. Now, I disagree on this flag, and I think Pete Carroll was upset about it. Here, Seattle drops out of the look, and they just play cover 3. One-on-one on the backside. Woolen's a tad... well, his transition's perfect, really. I don't actually... yeah. And the reason this ball is also thrown so bad is because there's no room for it to be fit in. Look here. This receiver would be told to try and win like in between the numbers and the sideline to that line here. He's nowhere near that. That doesn't work, but anyway. Yeah, so that's an unfortunate penalty. Let's get to the next play. So this is 3rd and 2. So a short yardage 3rd down stop from the defense. This is very impressive work from everyone. So I think this is, what have I got this charted as? I think this is cover... Well, it's split safety deal, but because it's in the goal line, it's more difficult. But there's your safety and there's your safety. And did they rush? Well, whatever's going on here is a very good job of Spoon taking on a block, Diggs replacing him, Woolen showing up on the edge. It could be cover 2 on this side of the field. It could also just be a blitz of Witherspoon because they send the nickel quite a lot. Now, if Woolen could tackle, he makes a great play here. He dipped around the edge, but his tackling has been a problem this year. But Bobby Wagner does a great job beating this free-releasing guard to the spot outside in the lane. The Rams are crackbacking down here and pulling the tackle around. And because Woolen's really occupied this crackback and got off it, he showing up on the inside, there's no way to cut that back. And Diggs, who's crack replaced well, gets outside, and Wagner and Diggs make a great play. But really, it's Wagner surviving that tackle chip, the pull of the tackle, and dipping through it and able to make into the tackle. So it's very impressive. And this is the type of run defense where everyone's sort of understanding where their help's coming from. Witherspoon knows that if he gets cracked, he can still be a help in how he plays through it. And also, Diggs understands he has to replace Woolen if he sees that happening. I don't know why I'm saying that. Witherspoon, if he sees that happening. This is good, quick recognition from Reek Woolen to come forward. That must be cover 2, the way he's played it like that. But excellent, because he's sort of he's also understanding that this is the like edge setter, but when he sees this crack back inside, he has to replace the edge, replace the force. So impressive run stop. 13:28. So this is a cool play. So it's that same look where you have a 3 technique, and then 2 double A gap players. Don't do that. This is a 3rd and 10 again, so it helps being in the long downs and distances, doesn't it? Now, we saw when they were in this look before, what they did is they dropped out. They put this guy in the hook of cover 3, this guy in the hook of cover 3. They put the weak safety in a curl flat. They played Spoon in a curl flat. And then they just played cover 3 on the back end. This play looks a bit more like man-to-man, doesn't it? Where it looks like this could be man on the slot. This could be man on the outside receiver, even from the fact that his body position in a square facing the receiver. This looks like it could be man-to-man as well. And it looks like Love could be just playing press on the tight end. And then these two have the running... that's not the running back. These two have the running back where one could blitz with Diggs in the post. But instead, what Seattle does is, after showing, we might pressure both of these, we might pressure this guy, after showing that as well, they just drop out again, these two guys. And on the back end, they play something where it's like quarter, half, but rushing 5 players. So it's, remember I said quarter, half, it's like cover 6. So it's like a cover 6 fire zone. So they're playing quarter, half, but matching up a bit more because they're bringing an extra guy off the edge. The ball come out quicker. We've also got less people to cover the receivers, so we need to play a bit tighter to them because we don't have as many zone defenders available to us. And this is an excellent example. Coverage-wise, they get these kind of deep in breakers. You see how Spoon is the disguise. He's spinning into the deep quarter. Woolen's playing a deep quarter. Diggs is immediately working over the top of a deep half. Trey Brown, he must deny the outside release and funnel that towards his deep half player. He's in the flats. And Wagner's kind of trying to match up to the inside of this receiver. And Brooks is trying to match up to the inside of this receiver, basically. But in a more cover 2 way, whereas Wagner's more of a cover 4 way. So you see how Wagner gets into the pocket here. He knows that there's potentially this help from this underneath defender here, so he can try and work here. Brooks had his 2 chip and then go flat, so he's just trying to stay to the inside of him, try and be a body presence here to then rally because it's 3rd and 10, playing the sticks. And what's been going on while this has been happening is Stafford's been trying to read this out downfield, and when his back foot hits, he's seen them drop out into a different coverage than what he was expecting. I think he wonders about trying to throw this honey hole throw because realistically this is removed from a coverage standpoint. And he's already off his spot with Julian Love being an absolute menace. This is something Jamal Adams could do because it's technically it's the weak safety. You could also put Jamal Adams where like a Jordan Brooks is there. But Julian Love does a great job of, because Seattle is walking these two up, Julian Love gets matched up first on the tight end chip and then on the running back. Now, why that is because of what pass protection the Rams opt to do. So they play, I think they're playing man-to-man to start off with. And when this guy sees Brooks drop out, he then works back to try and be a help. But either way, they put their line going to this side. So there's 2 one-on-ones out here, and there's no one on Julian Love on this side, other than the tight end and the back. So Seattle ends up running a game here, which Mario Edwards and Darrell Taylor could have executed better. Remember, they're on the one-on-one side, so they're trying to sort of pick and rub and separate from that. And they kind of run into each other. But what Love's able to do is beat the first chip and then work around the running back into Stafford, just as Stafford's thinking, okay, I can move up in the pocket and try and access something downfield. He does well to get that off annoyingly, but great job from Seattle of getting the slide to where they've only got 2. So the Rams end up with 3 for 2, and then they end up with the one-on-ones on the side they're bringing the pressure off. And if they run this game more effectively, they get better presence to the inside. OD Death Metal, they're running a 4-3 basically. I mean, if you're saying that you prefer 4-3 personnel, I mean, they're sort of doing that now as well with Draymond Jones. But like I said, over 85% of their snaps, it would be over 90% in like neutral situations. They're in a 4-down front. So I don't really know, like, if you could expand on what you mean by a 3-4. They have a 3-4 personnel roster, but that just means you get more speed on the field. See here, this is it's a 4 down front. Right. So that double A gap thing that we just looked at, this like package, it's not new for Seattle, but it's like the first time they've featured it fairly successfully this season and kind of returned to it. Okay, so then the next one's a 3rd and 4 at the end of the game. They end up giving up the touchdown here. End of the half. Sorry, they end up giving up the touchdown. Now this is an interesting play for me. So before the shift, so I believe this is Seattle in a split safety defense again, where you have the safety here and the safety here. And this is 2x2 distribution. But so OD Death Metal, you're saying about them really only using 2 DTs at the line of scrimmage. Well, if you just call an edge player, and you look at the edge play they've got out of guys and the way that they're able to take their shots and set the edge, it hasn't been a problem this year. And how they've cleaned up the interior and played more one gap principles with the 2 defensive tackles. And if you look at the play here, Draymond Jones is the second edge defender. This isn't any different to when, well, it's slightly different, but teams have got lighter in basically all aspects of football. Back in 2013 or 14, when Seattle had that amazing defense, they ran a lot of nickel. I think it was 2014 where they became largely a nickel overfront team, and your 2 edges were Cliff Averill and Michael Bennett. Now, Michael Bennett had a bit more size to him, but Draymond Jones is probably a similar size to what Michael Bennett was back then. And then you have Boye Mafe, who's about the same size as Cliff Averill. So I really think it's overblown. Look how offenses are looking to attack Seattle and what they're able to do with this look. The Rams are so 11 personnel heavy that it's a nickel world anyway. The reason they're a 3-4 team is just so that when they're in base, so with like kind of 3 defensive tackles on the interior, it's so that they can have either edge player as a threat to rush or drop. Back in the old way of rostering, when you had a 4-3 personnel, you ended up with situations where you'd have the 2 edge players in that element. You'd have Carlos Dunlap as one edge player, and then you'd have even KJ Wright as the other, as an extreme example. But everyone knew KJ Wright was the pass dropper and not going to be a pass rush threat. Whereas with Dunlap, everyone knew Dunlap was the pass rusher and not the drop threat. So teams could I could tell from home what coverage they were running based on where either of those people were aligned at the snap. Now they have the versatility from the edge group. And when it comes to nickel is nickel. And these guys have been setting the edge really well and playing great edge play and been accented by this current nickel system. Well, OD Death Metal, if you want them to get the 3 best defensive tackles on the field at the same time, well, this is it. Jones at the edge. But when they had Nwosu was a hell of an edge player. Unbelievable edge player, taking the shots and playing the run. So they were okay. So this is a play that I want to talk about because it's one of the 3rd down conversions they allowed. Now, this is what we call 4 strong. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, I think on this side of the field, this is cover 2. But essentially, both Brooks and Julian Love, they look over to this side of the field, and so it's a pure one-on-one over here. Now, against the Rams, they have given up like stuff to 4 strong areas, but it seems like a bit of overkill to have you essentially get 3 bodies looking for this type of route back, and you get no help in the slant window here, where down the field, there could be an advantage to that, but where, Brooks plays the low bit of this, but Love is able to play it if it was all the way down the field like that. But in the short red zone, it feels a bit like overkill to have both these guys looking for this guy back. And I don't know if maybe there's a communication thing between Love and Brooks, which could have happened, but it felt to me, like, especially live as well, that one of these two, possibly Brooks, could have just sat in this window and then worked back with the quarterback if he looked there. Also, good enough little separation from Nakua in terms of his handwork at the line of scrimmage there. But yeah, having 2 people look for this type of route back is, it seemed in this how quickly this happens, taking their eyes completely off the quarterback felt like quite an exaggeration. But yeah, Stafford did open hard looking that way. Right. So here we have 3rd and 7. Starts off with a trips look, and then they shift over. It's that same double A gap look from Seattle with the 2-3 tech front. Now Spoon's looking like he might blitz off the edge. Love's walked off with this. You can see how Stafford, and after the shift, he's got Brooks to walk off, so they know he's not coming. Also, a common thing teams will do against this double A gap look is move this guy into a sniffer position so that he's got a better and easier block to just be able to block up here, and then the center takes the other guy if they were both to rush. Then the Rams use that head start motion, which remember in week 1 was, or cheat motion, which in week 1 Seattle had real issues against. And then they just drop out and play. This might be Palms over here. Or it could just be cover 4. To me, this is probably cover 4. And then I think this side of the field looks like Palms, where if this guy's out within 5 yards, this is jumped and Love works over the top of 1. But because it's out within 7, this route gets locked up and this guy has to drive on the out. But this is an example of how dropping for depth at certain points is a bit of an issue for Seattle's defense. And Bobby Wagner's change of direction and burst is kind of it's not really that fast. So routes like this, where if you were really matching this, you'd have, as soon as this player breaks underneath, you'd have one of these guys drive on it with the understanding that we have some help in the other window. But that didn't happen. Because ultimately, on the play, whatever the coverage, Wagner's responsibility would be to relate to the third receiver, which is this guy, the third threat, the final 3. And the final 3 on the play, with how this runs like this, is essentially this middle sit route. But that's just how they're playing him. They're just dropping him to this middle hook quite a lot, and it creates this kind of combined with his not ability to not click and close quite as good, it creates some real issues. So that's just the thing which happens. Although on the play, there was offensive holding which went on. So let's see that. Oh, yeah. So pass rush solves a lot of stuff. And the play did take a while to come out. Draymond Jones is clearly hooked in his speed rush, playing on the defensive end spot again. What's nice is the way that they've mugged up. Seattle ends up with the running back looking here. They get one-on-ones on this side, on the right side, and the running back looking here, basically inside. And so Draymond Jones takes advantage of his one-on-one. Nice kind of push and then pull, rip through, draws the holding penalty. So then it's 3rd and 16, which is a bit more manageable. No need to really walk up into the A-gaps, Seattle feels. And they get a screenplay, and this is excellent recognition from Maffei, understanding it was too easy from the tackle here. The tackle was keen to get outside and get on his blocking path, his blocking track. So Maffei jumping up. You would like to think that Woolen would be able to beat that tackle. That's gone weird. You'd like to think Woolen would be able to beat that tackle to the spot, but you just don't know because it's going to cut up there with behind these blocks is like a tunnel screen. But a great work from Maffei. Jen, it's called a sniffer. It's not my fault football's weird like that. Third and 13, again, another long down and distance, which is helpful. Here, I think this is just cover 4. There's a cool game going on here. But they probably run that... Oh, no, they run double version of it. Now, this is why zone coverage is really reliant on pass rush. So watch how Woolen and Wagner react. They know that the ball and like the timing of the pass rush means that the ball has to be checked down. So rather than Woolen... Why do I keep calling him Woolen today? Rather than Witherspoon, I'll call him Spoon. Rather than Spoon keep getting depth, he understands that when Stafford moves up, and with how the pocket's developing, that the check down to this running back here is going to happen. So he's in this zone window, and there's, the routes haven't even got open yet. They start to hook up now, which is when Stafford's looking to throw the football. But Spoon understands that at this point he can start creeping down to the check down and makes the tackle. Coverage-wise for Stafford, he's running out of time before this kind of route is even an option. Although Woolen has throttled down well with that route. And this is what happens in cover 4 a lot of the time. If this number 2 blocks, or there's only one receiver out here, and it's trips over here, the backside safety can sort of help out. So he checks that this isn't a vertical route into his zone, like a dig, and then he starts having a look at this route back across the field and trying to be helping out on that. And then Spoon Does he make the tackle here? Kind of. Yeah. Which, again, when you force the check down, you have to tackle. Sasha, exactly right. Soft zone is meaningless. This isn't... This is how teams like the 49ers always play. They just drop off and the pass rush forces the ball out really quick. And that's the zone defenders are able to drop to a certain spot, and then they understand, well, I've dropped to the spot and the ball isn't come out yet, and I can see the quarterback starting to think about checking the ball down. I can break the... Every elite defense plays zone coverage like this, basically. Force the check down, rally to the check down, make the tackle, and you're forcing the check down quicker because your pass rush is good. But and especially in the 3rd and long situations, that's when you really play in this mode. Because why risk something? So 3rd and 16 here. Again, another big 3rd and long situation. There's the mugged up double A gap mugged look with 2-3 techniques, 2 edge players. I think they just run the ball. Yep. We don't want to watch that. Let me find a example of... I promised that I'd show you the coverage that I think will cause Brock Purdy problems. Now, why I said that is... Yes, that's perfect. Is it removes in-breaking routes. So this is 2nd and 16. So the coverage here, rather than playing like cover 4 or cover 6 or cover 8, they're going to play cover 3. So it looks like they're really trying to show that they're in a split safety deal with the middle of the field open. Now, remember I said how they like that sort of cheat head start motion to bunch up and then maybe switch release off the line, make it hard for defenders to pick them up. So on this play, it's the classic thing that the Rams love doing, of this deep kind of over, and then outside of that is like a deep route and then a dig. And what usually happens is this first route sucks players into the window, and then this corner playing outside leverage against the cut split of the receiver, he's left on an outside of the route trying to squeeze it, but there's a hole underneath, leverage-wise, underneath and inside for the quarterback to target. And this is cover 3 buzz. So what this is doing is it's sticking Diggs down here with depth and vision, and it's sticking this in Julian Love in the post back here. Bobby Wagner's in the weak hook of cover 3, which is a bit scary because it means he has to turn and run with the final 3, but against a tight end, potentially it's not as big a deal. And then Spoon is in the curl flat. So if you just play it through, watch Quandre Diggs on this play first off. You can see how if Stafford had looked back to here, timing-wise, Diggs would have been able to fold back into the window. And Wagner's sort of opening with this. Now, I think the Rams really are running this to try and high-low this look and hit here. But with how Seattle's relating to routes this season, and they're not really dropping to their old landmarks as much. They're more kind of working out which receiver they've got. Witherspoon makes a great play here on this route back. But you can see on the primary downfield concept, I think if Stafford had looked there, Diggs is able to work back into this window. And Spoon makes a almost brilliant interception, but a good play on the ball by looking at where the quarterback's looking. And yeah, the backside just plays out like man. And the pass rush did enough. This is a great rep from Mario Edwards being a nuisance. He sort of felt that the tackle was going back outside, and so he worked his one-on-one really well, which forced almost a bad mistake. Let me find another example of 3 bars. Oh yeah, this is a good one. So here we have a trips bunch look, and this is the Rams trying to get Seattle biting on like a gadget play. So what's going to happen is Diggs is going to come down into the strong hook. We're going to get the post player from Love. Brooks in the curl flat, but really he plays it like he's man on the running back. We have a deep third here, but it's like man on the receiver. We have a weak hook, Bobby Wagner here, whose job is to relate primarily to this final 3 player here. Spoon in the curl flat, and Woolen as the... Well, not Woolen. They're flipped, haven't they? Have they? No, they haven't. That's got to be Trey Brown. Anyway, this corner here is in the deep third. So as you play it through, watch how... Yeah, it is Trey Brown, of course. So watch how Quandre Diggs rotates down. And Stafford is trying like a fake screen concept. So he even pumps, I think. Well, like a shoulder feint here. But while Spoon bites down, Diggs rotating into the strong hook is able to get into this kind of seam area of the field. You see how he's right on that route. So Stafford's only option is to play there, and they get a loss of 3, I think. And again, good pass rush, kind of making sure that this ball comes out. But this is 3 strong bars with Diggs coming down at the strong hook, takes away like seam kind of presence routes. Think about the type of depth a dig plays to the passing strength. It would take away a dig, and that's a ridiculous. I don't know why they threw a flag on that. Maybe I'll get a good example of it versus a dig. That's not it. So this might be one. No. Yeah, this is a good example. So they were really conscious in this game about camping the kind of this type of window, which is why they're running this coverage to start off with. But one thing Diggs could have done better here is expanded from his kind of hook into the curl of the defense with Stafford's eyes looking out. He's just a tad late getting underneath this route because he's kind of stuck on really as the strong hook player. You're sort of relating 3 to the number 2. He could have expanded slightly quicker. But you can imagine if this had been a dig route, Diggs is right in the dig route. He didn't want to overrun it. So yeah. But I think with what Shanahan likes to do, this kind of wrinkle where it really does look like too high presentation, one subtle difference is Seattle, sometimes when they have their front aligned, they align it to incorporate the safety coming down into the strong hook, which is slightly different. So if Shanahan knows what he's seeing, he'll be able to adapt to that. But I don't, given they've only done it one game, unless he's got very good scouts, or I don't know if that's a clear tendency that they'll have identified yet. But anyway, so basically the defense got into big 3rd and longs, and then they played really good zone coverage, taking away the deep concepts. And their pass rush did enough to force the ball out to the check down, and then Seattle was able to tackle the check down in the main. Along with that short yardage play where their run defense is still performing well. Now, let me just catch up on what the chat is saying. Oh dear. Well, I can't really talk about some of this stuff, guys. But Alexander, I think if you watch that last press conference, I think all of the media asked Pete very good questions. The Monday one, I think Pete Carroll was asked a lot of good questions from a lot of the media, and there's a lot of good answers and a lot of insight. And as for adjustments, I've asked Pete Carroll about multiple schematic adjustments. So, yeah, you've also got to understand the relationship there for the guys who are on the beat, where they have to write about the whole team. And if they burn bridges, then it's not going to be good for them either. But also they need to have a good answer, not just a no or yes, because otherwise their job's made a lot more difficult to write an article on the development of the team. So, yeah. Justin, I'm glad that I've fit your simulation. There you go. Justin, if you don't know, I did a film review of the offense yesterday. Yes, shall I show? I'll show two. I'll show 2 of the Bobby Wagner examples, just so you guys know what I'm talking about. Well, I'll show a couple. Let's get a really good one so that it's just obvious. Oh yeah, this is quite sad. But it did happen. Bang. So here we have a game, a play, 1st and 10. Now this is generally, right, when Seattle plays cover 3, generally this safety comes down to the weak side and they play 3 weak sky, which generally, if the quarterback fakes the run this way, and then boots out this way, generally this is the weak hook defender. So I'm the hook, I'm the hook, I'm the curl flat, I'm the deep third, I'm the post third, I'm the deep third. And why the weak hook defender is important is because he is responsible for playing the crosser route off the intermediate. So say it was flood. So say we get a high corner here, a slide route out here, and then a block here, and then an over route here. Oh, let me draw that better. An over route here. This guy is responsible for sticking his foot in the ground and then turning to run with that route. The weak hook player in cover 3, playing the final 3 receiver. Now, the problem is that if you get something like what the Rams do here, then Bobby Wagner technically becomes the weak hook player. So with how the backfield flow is. So as they fake the run this side, well, then suddenly here's the high corner, here's the flat route. Here's the fourth in the pattern route, which is for Brooks. This route here is Wagner's responsibility to turn and run with it. And this is something that, Kyle Shanahan will be able to do too. And his agility and ability to turn in the open field, because he's slightly... It's a difficult concept because they're running it to the strong side, so it's not typical flood type of concept. It's dressing it up a bit better. But he's just slow agility-wise, especially compared to like a Jordan Brooks. And that's Tutu Atwell, who's absolutely rapid. So again, you don't want to call this coverage that often. You want to try and alleviate the stress and move the weak point. But it's something that is just a bit of a problem at times, especially when Wagner was so good at this for a lot of his career. But also offensive coordinators have got better at finding it. And then another play, which I think shows it, is... So this is another cover 3 play. Again, it's dressed up well, so it's meant to... It's really good play design. So let me just bin that. How do I bin that? There we go. Right, so... Look how tight the split of this number 1 receiver is. His curl route ends up sort of in the curl zone, so it's inside of where the outside defender who's worried about running with the wheel ends up. Really, with how Seattle plays this guy should end up on the second guy through his zone, and Woolen should be squeezing more aggressive to the threat up the seam. But they get a reroute here. Woolen doesn't... Love isn't in that area. Woolen's then conscious about this, so this is avoided the coverage. Now, why I highlight Bobby Wagner on the play is he's the weak hook player, right? Now, he's thinking, off the play action, I need to be able to take the final 3 back and across the field. So his rolling over to the other side is understandable. It's why the play is a good design. But I don't even, this is a good play design where they need to figure out how they play it on the front side. Brooks flares out more with the back, which is they've been a bit more aggressive with how they let that happen. But I just thought by this point here, Wagner's closing speed on the route where, technically 1, 2, this is the final 3. He just needs to push over more once he realizes. But his just ability to cover ground at this point is so slow. And again, if that's Jordan Brooks has made incredible pass breakups where he just sprints at that point and gets into the play. So even though it's not in Wagner's zone per se, That's technically the final three, even though it's on one side of the field where how Seattle handles this needs to be cleaned up, where on the front side of the zone coverage, the curl flat player in cover three, he should be responsible for the final two when it gets a wheel like this. So really, this is the first guy through his zone. He should be passing this to this guy. This guy needs to know this guy has the final two. So the second guy through his zone, so he can squeeze more aggressive to this guy, and play like 2-1. But yeah, I just thought a prime Bobby Wagner gets a lot closer to this play, even after a tricky design. And that's something that Shanahan's going to look at as well. So let me know what you think about that, and if you think I'm being too harsh on Wagner. He's made some great football. I know he had that amazing tackle feat again, and it's clear that everyone knows what they're doing on the defense. They're all playing on the same page. There's a real kind of understanding and buy-in between everyone. And Wagner's back wearing the green dot, isn't he? And you know, there's a lot of stuff going on. Like, they play that same front for most of the snaps. For them to be able to do that and still play the run successfully with that 2-4-5 personnel that we talked about, it speaks to the amount of mechanics going on up front. Like, they move a lot up front. There's a lot of stunts. There's a lot of outside backers, the edge players reading the type of block they're getting and then spiking inside to spill the football outside to alleviate stress points. So that's all has to be also, not only do the outside backers and the front players have to understand that, but that has to be, some of that's called in, and that's done by Wagner, because ultimately you want to stunt against certain sets, certain formations, certain offensive appearances, but you don't always want to be doing it. And, you know, the play caller can call the play in, but there's adjustments which go on after that, and then after motion, all that, after shifting, all that stuff. For me, the question with Wagner is what the trade-offs is 50-11. How much is Seattle giving up in coverage to have his other great contributions? I'd say 50-11, the way they played cover 3 last year was really good. And now, like, the weak point of their coverage tends to be around either him not being able to change direction so quick, or the techniques they're playing around him are sort of having to, and with him, or the technique they're playing with him is generally simpler, and it means that everyone else has to play in a way that is either more a bit limited, or is they have less options. Basically, they have less options, and it can be not less aggressive but less tight. Like, I know people laugh at stuff we've said in the podcast about Cody Barton and some of the defense we've had for Cody Barton, but he was able to wall match a slot receiver down the field and stuff. And Wagner can do that a bit, but not really. And there's just less you can do with him coverage-wise. And that has a knock-on effect on everyone. And then 50-11, the other thing with that trade-off and the great contributions is, I mean, last year, the whole defensive personnel, especially on the D-line, right, was the same as the previous year. What changed was the techniques they were playing up front, and it screwed it up for everyone, including the linebackers. So while they clearly could have played better themselves, they were put in terrible positions by the coaching staff, which is only evidenced by the adaptations, the adjustments Seattle made in that season, where they shifted their techniques in base. And then after the season, where immediately how they're playing nickel this year up front is completely different from a technique standpoint to what it was the previous season. And suddenly everyone's more certain. Linebackers know, I've got two guys who are basically going to one gap and smack the crap out of center. I've got a stunt coming in, and they can then play with more assertiveness, be more assured in how they fit the run too. So what I'm saying is, a Cody Barton this year and a Jordan Brooks and Mike this year would have looked better this year as well, because of how everything else is cleaner. But that's not to negate what Wagner's brought to the team, as I've spoke about. Any linebacker would look better in this situation than they would have done last year. That's an interesting take, Dan, about how you think they're an above average team, that Pete is elevating wins above the actual talent. Should be expected to win year 2 of a major teardown. We're lucky to be a playoff team both years right now. I kind of see where you're coming from. I think the disappointment right now of the team is the fact that heading into the year, we all expected them to improve. Like, they'd added to their talent generally. They hadn't really lost any significant players. The fact that it was like year 2 of a blossoming line with the 2 young tackles heading into their second season of football. Evan Brown starting the year so positively. I know he's regressed a tiny bit. And then, the offensive weapons. Truly, if the offense can just start scoring more touchdowns, everything will look so much simpler. But yeah, they need to figure it out pretty fast. Have I missed a donation? I have. Reflect the Sun. I don't know if I got to that. I did see it and mentally I addressed it, but I don't know if I said it. Thank you so much. I appreciate your support. Coffee Fund, very good. And Oliver, I've addressed your donation, but thank you very much. Oh, maybe you haven't actually. Happy Thanksgiving to you. And nice turkey. That's why I remembered it. The turkey. That's excellent colour. Right. No problem, 5011. It's difficult to describe the Wagner thing without really going into it. But I'm glad that you thought that was a good answer. Thank you, very kind. No, bro. Hawks defense is really missing Uchenna Nwosu right now. Frank Clark can't set the edge. Well, no, bro. What I'd say is Frank Clark got up the speed a bit more in this game. There's a lot of things they do with the outside backers where it looks like they're freelancing, but they're not. They're just taking a shot or like spilling the football in a way that the rest of the defense structure on a given play and the block that they get given on that play from the opponent allows them to do. That is detail they're to spend all of the offseason coaching the crap out of, and detail that Frank Clark did not get to enjoy. He also hadn't played football for a bit, so he's coming up to speed in that sense too, but you saw a bit more of his kind of playing in the style that they want from their edges in this game, so I have a bit of faith. But that being said, when I said after Seattle had that rough start in week 1 that Uchenna Nwosu can save the Seahawks defense, peek behind the curtain, that was YouTube talk. That was me trying to sell a video, but also there's a lot of truth to it because his ability against, they had the issues getting pressure against play action in this game. His ability to get pressure against play action pass protection and then take his shots against the runner and just be an unbelievable run defender for the type of skill set he has, the type of size he has, cannot be understated. And they do miss it. Of course they miss it. He's their best edge rusher. So that's unfortunate. Alexander says, Matty, do you have a... Well, you say Marty, Alexander, so... But anyway, I am aware that a certain phone company doesn't like... Their autocorrect software doesn't enjoy my name for some reason. Score prediction for 49ers Seahawks. The over-under was 43, and the total points... that was the total points. The 49ers are favored by 7. My score prediction is that Seattle wins 27-17. Let's have it. Sasha says, why does the offense have 2 or 3 good drives and then all of a sudden shit the bed? Well, if anyone knew the answer to that, it wouldn't keep happening, would it? What I'd say from the Rams game is that they were able to stay out of negative plays. They were able to run the ball and sprinkle that in well, but that goes hand in hand with negative plays. Um, Guys, do you think that was confident? I'm not. I'm just hoping. I'm living in hope here. I don't want a game where they allow they go 2 for 9 on third down and yet I chart 69 defensive plays. That's awful. But yeah, going back to the offense versus the Rams, avoiding negative plays, having a balanced offense, not being in third and long situations, and then converting when they got into the third down. So it's just basically very good execution across the board. And then when you have good execution like that, you're able to sequence better. And they had a good opening script. Now, I know it came up repeatedly with Pete Carolyn and Shane Waldron. Greg Bell of the Tacoma News Tribune asked both of them about opening script, and they didn't divulge the precise amount of plays that an opening script is for them. It can vary. It's usually about 15 to 20. But their opening plan was good. Raheem Morris kind of worked it out, but also when Seattle was behind the chains, behind the sticks, Morris had some really good pass rush schemes, which just wrecked Seattle's O-line. So Sasha, not the best answer, but when the team sort of tells you that they need to execute better and stop making mistakes, it can actually be that simple as well. I know afterwards I was annoyed at Shane Waldron, but then you look back at it and you're like, there's like one or two plays you can have real gripes with, but ultimately they keep shooting themselves in the foot. Like I mentioned, the way that they're going to be able to run the ball from gun with more gap style concepts, I think something they can lean on, but they have to be in downs and distances where the run game is still a viable approach. I also think we do see a bit more of a slightly run heavier approach. But like their first and second down passing has been very efficient. It's third downs where they've had the issues, along with the penalties. And Dan Chu, that's exactly it for me. It's what I said at the start. This is a massive moment in the season for Seattle. 11 games in after this game. The league is volatile and Seattle could catch fire and make a legit run at it. You know, like I said, if they win this game, they go first place in the NFC West. But if they lose, well, who knows what happens? And that is why we watch, yeah. Are the defenses doing anything against Gino that's different than when Russ was here? Says no, bro. That's hard to say, no, bro. I'd have to look. But when Russ was here, it was a lot of Seattle didn't run the ball, couldn't run the ball towards the end, generally speaking. And they got a lot of too high shell stuff. With Gino, it tends, and this speaks to the receiver skill set being an issue and potentially play calling too. With Gino, it's a lot of the problem stuff's like single high, tight coverage, playing a bit of press, maybe bringing 5, 6, usually 5. That causes some issues. Ultimately, I think I get the sense sometimes teams are daring Gino to be able to throw that deep sideline fade, which he has been able to do, but they haven't connected on it as often as they should for one reason or another. Some of that's Gino not hitting it. Some of that is DK not winning here on his route. Some of that's Lockett not quite seeming to have the same take the top off ability that he has in previous years. Some of that's JSN being a rookie and not quite working in. Yeah, the receiver skill set thing may be something we can talk about on next. Let's do it Tuesday. Next Tuesday's show. Hopefully they actually did well though. Right. Well, that's pretty much all I have. If there's any more questions, please do keep them coming in. But as it is Thanksgiving, not for me, but for you guys, I am thankful for all of you. That was lame, but thank you for tuning in. I'm enjoying doing this, doing it solo. I think I'm getting better at it. There's occasional moments where, because we release this as a podcast as well, I don't know how long to pause for, and I don't know how long to have water for. I don't want to talk for the sake of talking, but it's working it. The tape's quite easy, Dan. The tape is quite easy. But yeah. And then hopefully they win this game and the season looks up and I can release the article about their run defense on SeahawksOnTape.com. Follow me on and how they're using old principles with new personnel. Very nerdy, massive article with lots of videos. Follow me on Twitter at Matty F. Brown. You can see that there. Follow the podcast. That's Seattle Overload. Oliver, I answered about... I kind of answered about the matchup at the start of the show. 50-11, the next 11 games. Well, it's in your name, isn't it? So that would be nice. Well, thank you, everyone. Have a good rest of your day. Have a great Thanksgiving. Hope you spend it with the people who are important in your life. And eat lots of good food. And I'll see you all tomorrow live. Not solo, though. Ty will be joining me to recap how the Seahawks got on in San Francisco. Not in San Francisco, versus San Francisco in Action Green at Lumen Field. Have a good night, everyone.